What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturday. Today we're going to talk about the kind of aftermarket prices of Fanstoys and one other item, and talk about the late tax as a result of it, and sort of tie all those elements together. The one thing I want to mention before we really get into it is you guys want the verses on the Wild Rider. That is coming. I'm just super pressed for time this week. It's been nuts around here recently, and this week has not been favorable for me at all. And it certainly hasn't been easy on time either. So the moment that I have time, which I'm hoping will be next week, we will get into it. We will do the verses. We will compare all three. Those videos just take an awful long time to make, so I just don't have it. I don't have it this week. But a lot of times I base a lot of what we do here on Sit Down Saturday of like kind of the temperature of things out there. So when I get DMs and PMs, or I'm seeing posts left and right about the enormous increase in prices on the secondary market and people talking about stuff selling out and blah, 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 then I kind of know it's time to have a discussion about it. And then I just add those things in conjunction with the other things that I want to talk about. So I want to thank Andy for compiling a lot of this information for me in terms of the prices and stuff. And he's got a podcast called Your Mother's Favorite Podcast, so you can feel free to check that out as well. He also helps me with a lot of the Force Friday stuff. And shout out to his little brother as well, who's been inspired by some of my shells to create his own dioramas. He's 11 years old, so keep at it, Mac. Looking good. So let's do a little bit of house cleaning. The one thing I want to talk about in regard to Fanstoys Magnum is that when I do my reviews, I try to keep them objective with adding a little bit of subjectivity into them. I just want to say as a side note, that toy is pretty much perfect. It's the closest thing I've seen to perfect in a very long time. It's excellently well done. There's a conversation about scale and what's the appropriate scale for those things. Look, there's no clear right or wrong answer, in spite of how people felt in the comments that some people were absolutely sure they had the right answer in regard to scale. I've addressed it so many times, I feel like banging my head against this wall. And this isn't a wall, this is a table, but that's kind of the point where I'm at. All I can tell you is scale is in the eye of the beholder. It's what I always say. If the scale works for you, perfect. If it doesn't, find an alternate option. There are plenty out there. It's a good time to be a Stunticon fan. Secondly, last week, Sit Down Saturday, the X-Transbots conversation that we had to have. The thing about that is a lot of people were saying how they, well, not a lot of people to be fair, but a fair amount of people were saying, I'm looking forward to an Autobot X, or I'm looking forward to a Quintesson, etc., etc. And that's cool. That's a beautiful thing. I'm happy for you. I'm saying that there is a fundamental difference in how the people or the fans will react to certain reveals between, say, an Autobot X versus a character that has a really obvious gap in your collection, like, say, the Protectobots. That's my point. Or Sandstorm. But if you're in for Autobot X, if you've been waiting your entire life for Autobot X, I mean, there's good news for you. One's coming, so... And I mean that sincerely. I'm happy for you. I just think that that sort of thing is beneath X-Transbots at this point. I think they're capable of making a more exciting and a higher-end product. Maybe higher end is the wrong word, but at least more intricate. And lastly, the Unicron video. So it was going to be a mixed bag. I always know it's going to be a mixed bag when it's A, expensive, B, kind of highly anticipated, and C, that I'm not crazy about it or dislike it. And I don't dislike it, but I am not crazy about it. I have mixed feelings in regards to it, but I knew it was going to be a mixed bag when I put it out, and I got a mixed bag in the comments. Here is one thing I will say about it. If you're not going to transform it, I think it's great. Here's another thing I will say about it. When you tell me that something is not challenging to transform and you don't have it, you sound nuts. And not just like a little peanut, but like a whole bag of pistachios is how you sound. It sounds nuts. I can only speak for my interaction in regard to the transformation process, and I can tell you that it was an unpleasant one. I can also tell you that the instructions for that thing that has a lot of steps are done on a bifold. So it's just not the most user-friendly engineering that exists out there in the world. And it was very frustrating for me. And I got very upset with it by the end of it. And it definitely tainted how I felt about it. But in the same breath, I can tell you that the robot mode is pretty, stable, solid, and fun. So be that as it may. I'm not always going to agree with you. You just got to come to terms with that. It's okay though. We'll get past it. Two more things. Merch of the week. I had these bottle openers. They're stainless steel. I have a few designs. They're easy on shipping prices, etc., etc. And they are beautiful. I myself have the X-Men one I kept for myself. The paint will scratch off of them if you're using them excessively, I think. I can't say for sure because I only use them sort of normally around the house as like a normal household use. And I think under those circumstances, you'll be fine. I think if you are a bartender and you're planning on taking it to work to have a Transformer bottle opener at work while tending bar, that it will not last as long as you would hope. But I can tell you the one that I've had and used at home, I've used for for probably 3 years. Not a scratch on her, and I'll try to show that here as well. So hit me up if you're interested. One last thing before we get started. I'm only saying this because I'm getting a lot of DMs about it, and I'm just putting this out there so that people know, because a lot of people know my interest in it. My thoughts on the Pop Smoke album, which I've been looking forward to and I'm a huge fan, is it's not my favorite. I'm super happy that it's performing well and that it will provide for his family and extend his legacy. Rest in peace to the Big Woo. Okay, now let's go. This conversation is multifaceted. There's a number of things that need to take place in order to kind of really flesh out why this is important. One of those is the aftermarket prices in regard to the Fanstoys products. I get PMs all the time, people saying, look, I'm just getting into the hobby, where should I start? A lot of times they say, I'm looking at the board, I'm looking at the kind of playing field, and as I'm looking, I'm seeing that I should probably buy the Bag Q bugs as opposed to the Fanstoys bugs because of the price. And that's, not my view. My view is that you should just pony up the price and get what you want. That means you gotta save longer, then that's what it means. I've had to do it, we've all had to do it at some point. It's the name of the game. But I do want to take a look at the prices out there. So let's take a look, and these are looking at eBay items that have sold recently in regard to Fanstoys, and put it in perspective. A lot of times when people talk about what the Fanstoys stuff is going for, they're talking about what it's listed at, but not what it's sold. So I want to have that conversation. So the Dinobots. Sludge is the most expensive one, or Stomp. He averages around 600, but he can go for as high as 800. Soar, or Swoop, in his Toon Blue averages right around 400, with no significant difference between boxed or loose. The red one goes for about 350. Grimlock goes between 275 and 300, and Snarl goes for around 250. I find that one interesting because I can't help but think if maybe it had something to do with the Gigapower one coming out around the same time. Scoria, the average price for a boxed original release was about 375, but it can hit around 450. Lupus, which in my opinion is one of their worst figures, goes for around 500, with Mind Wipe between 220 and 250, and Six Shot between 225 and 250. And that covers all the Headmasters cartoon stuff they've done. The Insecticons. Bombshell averages around 275 for the purple chest, and between 300 and 300 for the gray chest. Shrapnel averages quite a bit lower compared to the others, selling for about 200, but some are even as low as 140. And Kickback averages around 250. Tesla averages about 250 as well, but a couple have gone for as low as 190, but some have gone for as high as 350. Galvatron around 325, Springer around 350, RC between 190 and 230, Cyclonus around 350, Hot Rod around 150. Skyfire goes for about 450, with the metallic version going around 500. And Spotter is the only other one really worth talking about that goes for about 375, though often can reach as high as 450. Most of the other ones have retained their value and gone up 25 to 50 bucks a pop. Now, what does that say? It says something about supply and demand. It says something about the popularity of Fanstoys products. If you compare a lot of the other pieces that they were competing with along the lines, they're not averaging at the same price. That's just a fact, regardless of what one may prefer. So they're popular pieces, right? But what has changed recently? In my opinion, gone are the days where you would hit up retailers months afterwards for a Fanstoys product. That day is over. Usually they're well sold out far before the product ever hits the street, as it were. With Drag Strip, I think recently being the most obvious one that sold out lickety-split. But the same went for Astro Train, right? And we talked about it a bit on this channel. But I'm actually getting hit up from people overseas that are saying that it's a choice. They're hearing that it's a choice to have lower runs. So what are we seeing as a result of the lower runs? Well, one thing we're seeing is high volume. Fanstoys has now dropped 2 pieces inside of 30 days of one another. The last Jet they put out and the last Stunticon they put out are within 1 month. That's more than 1 piece a month. Masterpiece. We don't see that very often, if ever, especially with 2 totally different molds. Fanstoys is pretty much averaging 1 piece a month this year, which is nuts. I don't think that they have any interest in driving up the secondary market. I don't think that that's a priority for them. However, if something is high in demand, it does do something about the status of the company. If the status of the company has a certain reputation, it's going to ultimately lead to the success. So what do I mean by that? If the reputation for Fanstoys is that everything sells out and then it gets raked over the coals on the secondary market, then everybody's pre-order is going to be faster. What does that mean? If the pre-order is faster for all of the major retailers are going to want to order more of the product from Fanstoys. What does that mean? Fanstoys would then have an incentive to create more product. What does that mean? Fanstoys gets more money, right? So if it all comes down to that, then it's not a bad business plan to kind of suck out the supply in order to create the higher demand, in order to create a larger supply. Hopefully is the case in regard to the higher supply ultimately coming. It's not like if a Stomp gets sold on the secondary market at $600 that Fanstoys makes $400 profit. it unless they're holding back their own stock and selling online, which we're not seeing any sort of evidence of. Now, what we have seen other companies do in the past is have a second release that was never a second production run. So what they do is they create 500 Tarns, right? And I'm not saying, I'm just using it as an example. It was the first one I saw when I looked up there. It has nothing to do with that particular piece. And 500 is just a round number. It seems like most production runs are around 1,000. But they produce 500, let's say, just to keep the numbers even. They release 250. The 250 get sucked up by the market. It creates a higher demand for a shorter supply. A couple months go by. They may even sell a few on eBay, and then they release a second run, but the second run is just of the first production line, right? But it's creating a market where if it's like if you walk by in a convention and you want to get an iPhone adapter cord, and there's 30 of them on the rack. It was, I'll get it. Maybe just check on it at the end of the day and see if I really need one. But if there's only one left, you're much more likely to pick it up. It's weird, isn't it? Look at it. Anyway, do you see what I'm saying? Some companies have done that. We're not getting any real evidence of it here because we're not seeing a ton of secondary runs from Fanstoys. It happens, but we're not seeing a ton of it. So the only incentive that I can think that they would have for doing this would be to drive up the demand for their product to ultimately make vendors want to have increased purchases of their product for them to be able to create more and increase everybody's bottom line. It's the only thing I can come up with. The only other idea I could remotely have in regards to that is in order to turn around things faster in the factory, is it worthwhile for them to have smaller runs so they create a batch of, let's say they normally do 1,200. So boom, they create a batch of 1,000, put the 1,000 out on the street. That allows them to turn around everything mold-wise in the factory, flip over to the next product in order to get more product out. That's the only other thing. Those are the only two ideas that I can come up with as to why this has happened. And what advice do I have in regards to it? Just gotta be quick. You gotta be quick for now. And I know that sucks. And trust me, I want everybody to get the figures they want. I will say it kind of makes it a little exciting for me. Like I see the pre-order notice go up and I'm like, oh, I gotta act fast, you know? But don't get me wrong, I want everybody to get what they want, especially on the initial production run. And I want Fanstoys to be successful, so if that means more revenue for them, I want that also, you know? So they can create more products, sell more pieces, the fans are happy, the company's factory, I mean, that's what I want, right? Everybody's happy. But you gotta be quick. You gotta be quick for now, and hopefully something will happen where it'll kind of balance out a bit in the future. But as of right now, like I've been trying to say on this channel for almost a year, like we're seeing less and less companies really participate in those waters. Fanstoys is obviously the standout in those waters. As a result, all of the demand is going there. They released Stunticons after two other companies had announced theirs and had pretty good offerings of them, and their drag strip still sells out. Do you know what I'm saying? Like they're in a league of their own. I don't think any other company could do that at this point. And I know I'm saying that as a defender, right? I get it. But if there's another company that could do it, I don't see it. The only other company I can think of that kind of has that ravenous fan base for their product is MMC. And I see that much more with their reformatted stuff than I do with their Ocular Max stuff. So for now, my advice is to be quick or try to set up something with your retailer of choice. That's all I can say. Hopefully we'll get a little bit more information. It'll come to light, but the late tax is definitely a thing. And sometimes you gotta pay to play. Sometimes patience saves pockets, as my friend Chris Pinkerton would say, but oftentimes you gotta pay to play. But let's give an example though, since we're talking about patience saving pockets. There's another thing that has happened recently, right? This DeLorean has gone up on Hasbro Pulse, which is like part of their crossover line. Ecto-1, DeLorean. Maybe we'll see a kit from Knight Rider or something like that. I would say that it's definitely possible to get some masked vehicles because Hasbro owns that too, you know, so that would be just smart. But this is a different scenario, right? This looks like people buying up the market in order to scalp the price. And we're seeing these things go up for like, I think $1,000 or something. Let me tell you something. Do not spend $1,000 for this thing, okay? Do not. If it's not a super exclusive, and even if it is a super exclusive, Hasbro has a tendency and a history of putting it out later. Do you know how many Marvel Legends exclusives I paid top dollar for and then just they hit regular retail a couple years later? This is an example where patience saves pockets. I know it's cool. I know it's interesting. Please, if you listen to Uncle Skullface about anything, listen to him about this. Do not spend $1,000 for this thing. You will regret it. I do think that Hasbro Pulse needs to do something about how they're running Hasbro Pulse. We can have a conversation about that at some point. There have been some weird, wonky things. I think it's insane that Amazon is dropping the G.I. Joe stuff before Hasbro is dropping the G.I. Joe stuff, and it's Hasbro's. There's some stuff there. There's some kinks in that system that need to get worked out, but overall, I like what they're doing. And I don't want to get too much off on a tangent, but that is something that's worth talking about. So I hope that helps. I hope that was informative. At some point, I get a lot of kind of talk about what's going on with Fanstoys in regards to their aftermarket stuff. those are the only two concepts that I can come up with. It's either to kind of increase the demand for initial production runs or create some sort of false sense of scarcity, I guess, to drive up runs or to flip molds faster to get stuff out quicker. One seems more of a fan service thing, and one seems, the other two seem more kind of business minded. And the fans don't lose with the business minded stuff, so I'm guessing it's a business minded thing, but I don't know. I know that one's a little heavy, a little numbery, but hopefully we can get into some more fun stuff soon. I got a lot of stuff lined up for Sit Down Saturday here. And Dummies. And I got some good dummy stuff going. So that's it. Hope you guys are staying safe. Hope you guys are staying sane. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Take care.